Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big, I nearly said Big Henry News. I don't know. Maybe I've been thinking about Paul Henry today. Big Henry News. Good to be back with you guys. I'm on pretty much by myself tonight. Chewy is at the Dunedin Fringe Festival. He'll be there today and tomorrow night. I might have someone joining me to co-host tomorrow night. We do have a guest coming up very, very shortly, a friend of the show, to talk about some national party politics to do with education, which was some, well, it wasn't really news released today. They sort of announced that there was an upcoming announcement. So there was an announcement today about an announcement tomorrow. So I'm sure we'll probably look at more details about this tomorrow night as well. But we have got coming on just a few seconds, a friend of the show, Titai Tokerau Principals President Pat Newman, who we've had on before, talking about things that National have been talking about to do with education. So he'll be coming up in just a couple of secs, but we're looking forward to spending the night with you. Good to be back. Good to see Emma. I've had a few of you contact me, actually. Emma won the Byron book, and it turned up today. So well done, Emma. And I got an email from Rob today saying something that we were sending to him turned up as well. So good to see that you guys are starting to. I did a bit of a stock take the other day and realized there was a few people on my list who hadn't received things that were going to be sent to them. If you become a part of our Patreon, 2 of the levels have gifts on them, and other ones were prizes that we're giving away. Speaking of Patreon, let's say g'day and thanks to our patrons. We appreciate you all. If you join to our producer or senior producer level, I think producers get caps and senior producers get t-shirts and caps. This t-shirt, the t-shirt that's, you can't really see it, can you? Hang on. This is professional, eh? Hang on. The t-shirt that's got that logo on it, what we call the Beardy Boy logo, that logo on it. So that went out to Rob, actually, and I think Rob sent me an email saying he received it, and it was top notch. He said the quality was amazing, certainly well worth becoming a senior producer just to receive that, if nothing else. Thank you very much for the patrons. Thank you for being on board, patrons. We appreciate you, and we genuinely thank you for your, $5, $8, $15, $3,500 that you give us per month, because it does help us pay for your bills and tick over what we're doing. So genuinely thanks and genuine appreciation. And if you are, as they say, a lurker, if you're a lurker who hates us, like there's a couple of particular people who don't seem to like what we're doing very much. They're always in the comments or they're always in the comments on YouTube when they watch on demand afterwards. So I'm kind of putting a challenge out to you people who don't like us at all. If you're enjoying our content, why don't you do a super chat? Why don't you become a patron? Because if you become a patron, it's like then you can continue to watch us and not enjoy us and help us to continue to make the stuff that you don't enjoy. Just saying. Patreon.com/Big Hairy News if you do want to be a part of that. And of course, as Chewy always says, as soon as you become a patron, you automatically become 22% better looking. Just like that. Later on this evening, we're going to be having a look at the Posie Parker. Is that right? Posie Parker? Posie Parker. I'm Parker Posie Parker situation and the entry granted to New Zealand. I was on Today FM this afternoon doing my Wednesday afternoon panel by Corridor, it's called. And I talked about what we're about to talk about next, which is national education. We talked about Posie Parker, and we talked about something else, which doesn't matter. So I'm actually going to play a couple of the clips from that conversation we had today as well. And it's almost like I feel like I don't have a lot more to add to the conversation, because when you're doing a panel on the radio show, not like here where me and Chewy do our world famous 90-minute, 60-minute show, but you kind of have 2 minutes. But today it kind of expanded a little bit, especially the Kelly Jane Minkin conversation ended up being like 5 or 6 minutes. And I'm going to kind of hold off on some of my opinion until I play that, because my opinion is pretty succinct and stuff within that. But I thought I'd play a couple of clips for you from Today FM today, and I thought we'd show you a few bits and pieces. But right now, I want to talk about this National announcing their upcoming announcement, and I want to bring into the show the Principals President from Tokerau Principals President Pat Newman is going to join us, and Pat's got some things to say about what National's alluding to saying. G'day, Pat.
Yeah, g'day, mate. How are you?
Yeah, doing good. Good to have you back. You're becoming a regular.
yeah. I tend to be one. I've got a name called a kahawahanui. The other name for it is a big mouth.
Right. Kahawanui. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Now, listen, before we get going, now we can kind of circle back to this if I'm wrong. You released a press release very, very recently. In fact, it was like at 4:30 this afternoon. You can't get blood out of a stone. I read through it. This is bigger than what Nationals just talked about today, eh? Do you want to tell us what the press release is about? Nutshell it for us, because before you do, one of the things I find particularly interesting from your press release is where you're talking obviously to politicians, and you're saying, we've led our schools and communities through COVID and its various formats. We've led our schools and communities through major flooding, Northland obviously. We have spearheaded the drive to get our pupils back into school. We have carried the stress and problems of our staff in COVID and flooding. We are teaching in classrooms because there are not relief teachers to cover sick teachers, and then running our schools into the dark of nights. Enough is enough. The old saying, you can't get blood out of a stone. Tell us about the press release. Why did you feel the need to write it, and nutshell what the whole thing's about?
In a nutshell, I wrote it because of the number of principals, not just actually in Tokerau, but throughout New Zealand, who are walking off the job at the moment. Walking off the job at the end of this term.
Right.
Walking off the job at the end of the Christmas holidays. Who are saying to me, we cannot handle this any longer, that the actual requirements on us are absolutely bloody ridiculous.
Right.
And what you didn't highlight in there was the first part, and that, which I think I talked about 13, I can't remember whether it's 13 or 12, it's one's for one and one's for the other. 13 major strategies that we actually have to, and policies that we're required to understand, to train our staff on, to get them up to speed all at once within the next year to 2 years.
Right.
On top of that, there's another 12 major changes in education from the ministry itself, etc., that we have to get our heads around and work with. And on top of that, we're still required to run our schools. We're still required to work with our whānau that are in dire needs, all those sort of things. And on top of that, I've got colleagues, and I said it in there, who are teaching 3 to 4 days a week when they should be released to run their schools, but they're actually in classrooms because we can't get relievers.
Mm.
And this is not just to Labour, this is to every bloody politician out there who think they know what it's like to run a school, yet they're sitting on their backsides in Wellington pontificating with the latest bloody idea and expecting us to instigate it. And yes, I am pissed off. And I'm sorry if I'm not sorry if I'm using this language. If it takes that to get through to the bloody idiots down there, and I'm talking about any politician that is actually thinking that you can expect people to bring in 25 major changes in a year and a half and run a school and expect staff to be able to do it, they're in bloody cuckoo land.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we're here tonight to talk as well about the National Party, but you're talking about Labour.
Some could say they're in cuckoo land all the time.
Let's not beat around the bush. I mean, we always like to play each ball on its merits. Let's throw some comments towards the incumbent Labour government and what they're doing. So this is about what's happening right now. Why are all the changes? Why do they deem all these changes and all these new policies necessary?
Well, I've got to be honest, and the 13 and the 12 have come out of Labour. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm not biased. Education is what I worry about, not whether it's Labour or National, and when we're talking education. But I am fed up also with National. They talk about the poor state of education. Well, if you go back 15 or 20 years ago when they instigated the thing called national standards, the professionals told them, if you do this, you'll have the following results. And they took no bloody notice like politicians never ever do. We are reaping those results now. We told them that you'll narrow the curriculum. We told them that the teaching would deteriorate. They destroyed education under it. Now they're bringing out a new version of it that's actually worse. Who the hell wants their child tested every year? What about the children who may be dyslexic or have a problem with testing, or the special ed kids, or the kids who have a bent in art or music or social studies or phys ed, and perhaps not quite as good in language or reading? Are they lesser kids? And I'm fed up with these politicians. And if you look at this one, you can see very clearly it's a typical example of a politician trying to get votes by going to the basis things of what people might vote for, rather than thinking about what actually is good for education. And we have it every damn time. Every 3 years, we're required to put up with nincompoop politicians coming up with their favourite thing to get votes. I just wish they'd think what's good for education, what's good for kids. That doesn't seem to come into it.
Let's have a look then. We're going to have a look at the story on AM show this morning. Ryan Bridge talking to National's hairless leader, and I don't know if we'll play the whole thing, but this is the story that we're going to push through for the rest of this chat as well. About, you've talked about what's happening right now. The press release is about what's happening right now. Now you've got a potential future government basically saying, well, I'll let them say it. But it sounds like almost saying we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So if Labour's bringing in these 25 new things, 13, 12, it sounds like National's saying we're going to bring in all the new things. And I don't know how that's going to work in schools, but let's just have a bit of a listen to the conversation from this morning. Ryan Bridge speaking to Christopher Luxon about this on the AM show.
From 7 o'clock, National plans to rewrite the curriculum, the school curriculum, if it gets into power after this year's election. The National Party leader, Christopher Luxon's here to explain what, why and how, with a press release out today. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Great to have you here, and good to be talking about education. It's the issue on a lot of people's minds. Yeah. However, you've given us an announcement about an announcement, because you're not actually releasing any detail until Thursday.
No, what we're talking about tomorrow is doing the basics brilliantly in education. And today, really, there's one piece of that we can talk about, which is how we actually make sure we set up our kids for success with really good maths, reading, writing and science curriculum.
So let me guess, you're not going to tell me what you're going to announce tomorrow, are you?
I can tell you one piece of it.
Okay, what's that?
Well, this is this point, which is, and I'm pleased we are talking about education, because to me, this is probably the most alarming thing that I've encountered in my 2 years in politics. Here we sit in a developed country.
His PR people need to tell him to stop mentioning he's only been in politics for two years, because I think that's one of the things people are struggling with him, that he's not experienced in what he's doing. But that's an opinion side point for me.
We've got poor attendance rates, but importantly, we've got really poor academic achievement results. And our results have actually been slipping relative to past New Zealand students over the last 20 years, and also relative to other countries. And last year we saw that only 2/3 of our 15-year-olds could pass the most basic maths, reading and writing test. And that's really alarming to me, because as I look at the future of New Zealand, we have a great country, we've got endless potential, but the key thing that will enable us to unlock and realise all of that will be having a world-class education system, so we can get a world-class quality of standard of living. So it's a really important conversation that we're having.
Everyone agrees with you so far.
So within
your solution.
Let me ask you this question, Pat. I'm going to stop partway through, because you brought up something. I remember when I was working in radio, writing blog posts about national standards. National standards came in under the national government. Yes, am I correct in that?
They definitely came in under the national government, and he talks about the last 20 years. Well, they were in power running the education system for 11 years of it, and we were telling them all the way through, what you were trying to do is destroying education, children's learning, and also, above all, the fun of it, because all it concentrating on, and he's talking about it, was reading, writing and maths. Now, reading, writing and maths are crucial, but they don't make the whole child. And he's going back to that rubbish, and he's not listened. It's probably because he's so totally inexperienced as a leader and as a politician. He's being fed this stuff a bit like a puppet by the people sitting behind his back, particularly David Seymour and his ilk.
Right. Yeah. And I think last time we talked, you were saying that you think David Seymour actually wants to be the Minister for Education, and that sort of is terrifying some of the
Well,
teachers.
I've got to be honest. I think he wants to be the Prime Minister, but if he'll give up that for being a Minister of Ed, I would rather that he was actually down to the coal mine somewhere like that, earning his living that way.
Could you just nutshell for us in 60 seconds or less? You've made a claim tonight that what we're seeing today is a direct result, a downstream result of national standards that were implemented by a national government.
Yep.
Could you nutshell for us life before national standards versus life today in the school when it comes to achievement? Because Luxon seems to be complaining about achievement. What was the achievement and how was it measurable before national standards to now? So can you give us the timeline of what it's looked like since they've implemented it? Is there any way you can kind of nutshell or describe that for us?
Yeah, measurable is a difficult problem, all right? Because Luxton and the ilk of him seem to think that you can take a child, look into their head, and measure what they have learned exactly this year in isolation to their whole life, in isolation to what they learned from the teacher the year before, and what they've learned from home, and whether it's been a good day or a bad day or not. They've got this idea. It's a bit like you push a button and it goes, this child knows.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Measurable is actually when you look over a period of time at what they know and what they can do and what they can act in. And I don't know if that explains the difference in what we view measurable about. What we told them at the time was that if you narrow the curriculum to reading, writing, and maths, then what about all the other parts that make up a person? That was the first thing. What we told them at the time was that measuring a pig's ear doesn't 100 times, measuring the weight of a pig 100 times actually doesn't improve the weight gain.
Right.
The same as measuring what a child supposedly knows when we know it's false doesn't actually help learning. What we told them was that we know from pedagogy that children learn when they're not stressed, that when they're not put under the huge pressure, that when we allow them to actually use things like the touch, the feel, all their emotions to learn, that, including in reading and writing and maths, that when we actually push creativity rather than specific grammar and all the rest of it, that we actually get learning. What we ended up with was actually putting 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, all the kids under that much damn pressure to attain marks so that we looked good, because that's what the system pushed us into.
Yeah.
That everything else stopped. And if you can imagine it, and if you are not good at a particular subject, say you're not good at reading because you might be dyslexic.
Yep.
But the system says, oh, shit, boy, you've got to learn to read because you'll upset our statistics. So we give you more and more and more reading. What are you going to do? Are you going to learn reading? Like hell you are. So it's this philosophy that's behind it.
I remember.
And now they're talking about testing and all that every year.
I remember I wrote a blog piece about national standards when it came in, and it was, I remember some of the parts from it. My brain's a bit Swiss cheese at the best of times, but talking about it wasn't actually a national standard either, because different schools could then measure in different ways and therefore give different results, and therefore the teachers could then aim to teach to the test rather than teach to educate the child. And I wrote this blog post, and the NZEI actually put it on their website because they wanted to spread it around as well. And it was so you're the first person I've heard say it as bluntly as this, but you are attributing national standards brought in by the national government to the results we're getting today. This is the downstream effect.
It is, because the effect of national standards is still following through. Of course, there are other things. I think society's got hard, and I think all socioeconomics have got hard. Yes, of course they come into it. But they could have been actually covered a hell of a lot better if we were actually able in those years to teach the whole lot of the kids. I look at the teenage problems now, all right? And I'll attribute that to them too. Because where were those kids being taught empathy? Where were those kids being taught under social studies how to get on with each other?
Yeah.
Where were those kids being taught that people have rights? It didn't happen under national standards because we had to just do reading, writing, and maths. And it's again an example. And I I really get angry that these politicians fly in, they grab some idea that will have popular vote without people thinking about it, and they force it on the system every 3 years. And it doesn't matter which party it is. I wish we were like Finland. They quote Finland, but Finland actually have an agreement amongst political parties that education stays out of the politics.
Right.
And they look at actually learning. But it seems that the politicians we have in New Zealand are too puerile to actually think that that could be a benefit to the nation.
Pat, let's play a bit more of this. Even though it might grind your gears to hear a bit more of it, let's play a bit more of it to see what Mr. Luxon's got to say.
The one you're going to tell us about today is ripping up the curriculum and rewriting it.
No. So what it is about is saying, look, there are 4 skills that we know that are really determinants of our success for our kids for their future. And that is making sure that they are really grounded in the basics of maths, reading, writing, and science. And what we're saying is at the moment, the curriculum for maths, reading, writing, and science is done in 3-year bands, essentially, is how the curriculum is written. It's quite loose. When I look at other countries like the UK or Australia, they have very definitive knowledge that they want to teach in each year on each of those 4 subjects by year. And so, for example, in Australia or England, you learn addition, subtraction in year 1. Here in New Zealand, you could learn that anywhere between year 2 to 5.
Right.
Algebra starts for British kids and Australian kids in year 5. For us, it can start anywhere between year 6 to 10. And the problem with that is threefold. One is you're never quite, from the student's point of view, they can get lost in that 3-year window of actually how are they progressing against that curriculum over that 3-year period. The teachers also, it's not as, they put a lot of extra work in on weekends and in the evenings trying to teach lessons, but rather because they don't have enough clarity about what they should be teaching to this year group at this time at this year.
It sounds
and the
like
same for parents. They don't really have a sense of whether their child's on track or off track.
So who told you this?
Well, Erica Stanford and I actually over the last year have been out and about meeting with school principals, meeting with academic experts, meeting with think tanks.
So this is what schools want. So we're going to have the PPTA, the teachers' unions, we're going to have the principals' unions come out and support what you're
But what I'd say is there are many schools that have actually, have quite good focus around it. But what we do need is a centralized.
Notice he didn't say yes to that. No, it's just notice.
Real clarity year by year, not in these bands of 2 or 3 years.
Okay, so you said you're not rewriting the curriculum. It says here, today I'm announcing National will rewrite the New Zealand curriculum.
With respect to maths, reading, science.
So only those areas.
No, that'll look. Now, I was being a bit facetious. I didn't get to say this today on this afternoon on Today FM, so I'll say it now. I was being a bit facetious. If I wonder this evangelical Christian as well leader, if they're going to be rewriting the science curriculum, I just wonder how old the Earth's going to be and what happens to creation theory versus evolution with, this conservative government wanting to rewrite things. I know I'm not saying they're the same as MAGA at all, but you can see what happens when conservative politicians in places like America get involved in writing curriculums and what ends up happening. I do have a ponderance as to who's going to be the ones writing them and how we know that, the so-called change and where it's going to go. Anyway, I also wonder as well, like the idea of saying in year 1 you must learn X. What if child in class is not ready yet to learn X in year 1? Then they fail. Like,
that was a failing of national standards because we said everyone was ready at 5. I came through with pedagogy that said children are ready to read at different ages. Yeah. And we know, for instance, there's a difference between boys learning and girls learning to start off with. All right. We came through when we actually said there were more important things than just reading, writing, and maths. Don't get me wrong, they're crucial, all right? But how dare a politician stand up there and say it's not important for children to learn actually how to get on with each other? No wonder we've got the problems we have. How dare he say it's not important that people who have strong strengths in our kids learn about art and to appreciate it, to express themselves, or listening to music or writing music. Is he thinking that because you're a politician, you're worth more than an artist, for instance, and all the rest of it? And I go back, and you noticed he never, ever said that he had agreement with the unions, with the professional bodies, with any of the academics except a few picked favourite people. And I'm feeling very, very sad. I'd love the politicians to rewrite the curriculum. They'll never agree on it, so we'll never get a new one.
Or like you say, if he came and talked to you about it and he visited your school, he might get a different experience than if he went
Well, I'm
somewhere
hearing,
else.
to be quite honest, from principals who have sent him invites, asked them to come and look at their schools, but because they don't quite fit what he's talking about, and he probably wouldn't understand what they talked to him about, he's never bothered to even reply.
Hey, lastly, Pat, I want to make this really clear. I haven't given too many opinions in our chat because I'm actually going to play the conversation I had on Today FM next, right? So people are going to hear my thoughts in there. But the one thing that I want to kind of highlight as well is what he's setting up, right? Year 1, you do this. Year 2, you do this. Year 3, you do that. And I want to spell out. You kind of already said it, but I really want to spell this out for kids that are, ready for that level. For kids who come from secure and safe homes, for kids that have food in their bellies and they're ready to go, for privileged kids, there'll probably be some level of fineness there. But for vulnerable kids, or for kids who are like dyslexic or have learning difficulties or whatever, this will be exponentially worse results than what he thinks are bad results now.
What's worse is every year you'll be saying to those kids, you're a failure.
Yep.
Even though we know kids learn at different levels. He will be publishing stuff out to parents. The pressure on those kids at 5-year-olds, at 6-year-olds, and so on will be absolutely immense. It is worse than national standards, but the bloody buggers haven't learned. All they think is that this will give them some votes. And in actual fact, they are traitors to the future of our country because they are destroying our kids' futures, and they need to stop it.
Wow. Yeah, look, I think that's a pretty good place to leave it, Pat. I thank you for joining us tonight. As you'll probably, if you're not aware, be aware now, you're always welcome to come have a chat with us. Te Tai Tokerau Principals President Pat Newman. Enjoyed speaking to you. Hopefully, though, you can go and have like a cup of chamomile now. We haven't worked out too much. You'll be able to get to sleep tonight.
I'm all right, mate. I've been dealing with these idiots down there for 40-something years as a principal. All right.
Well, listen, can I just say as well, there's a lot of chat going on at the moment. I want to actually, before you go, there is a lot of this kind of conversation. You are heroes, Pat Newman. There is a lot of that in the chat right now, talking about principals and teachers, being heroes. So make sure you know that from much of the population, even if you're not getting it from a certain sector of the political sphere right now.
Thank you, mate. You have a good night.
All right, Pat, you too. All the best, mate. That is Pat Newman. And let's go through some of these chats. I know some of you, what is it? Is it Inception? 2 Pats? Too many Pats? JK says, public don't realize it takes 3 hours prep for every 1 hour of teaching. I was an IT tutor, not a teacher. Free Soul says, it was a mess under national. Gareth says, Luxon wants to bring back basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, and boot camps. That's very clever, Gareth, and boot camps. I do like that bit as well. Carl says, pithy slogans don't make great policy, and Luxon only knows how to generate corporate slogans. This feeds into the view that he's nothing but an empty suit, and that's wonder why he's tanking in the polls. Lots of people in the chat also agreed with that. I didn't bring them all up, though. I think it's Vicky, isn't it? Vicky? Remind me, Vicky. National standards were criminal abuse of learners and teachers is it IMP? In my opinion, IMO. Freestyle says, as an artistic kid, I failed dismally at state school. Then I went to Steiner and flourished. Planner Walk says, I think the decile system was also a huge mistake. And JK says, does anyone else know Luxon used to run an airline? Has he ever mentioned it? See, when Chewy's not here, when our comedian's not here, you guys actually fill in perfectly in the comedy. Well done. Well done. All right, I'm going to share with you the conversation from Today FM as well. And look, it's just there are. I actually think what they try and do with these panels is they try to have you're on the right and you're on the left and let's have a conversation. I think both of us are kind of on the left in this conversation. So I don't know how it works as broadcasting, but let's have a listen to the conversation on Today FM this afternoon with us two panelists talking about this exact issue and what we had to say there.
The National Party's overhaul of the school curriculum. We don't really know what that overhaul is going to look like. We know little bits. Kind of announced they're going to do it today, and in the first round they're going to announce tomorrow. Do you think it is failing?
So we've lost the audio, have we? Have we lost the audio? Okay, I apologize, guys. I'm not sure why my system is doing this. Thank you, Windows. Appreciate that. Windows, we need more Patreons on board so we can actually get some Macs in the studio. Because for some reason, and I'll have to obviously edit all of this out to do our audio podcast afterwards, but for some reason, the Windows-based computer that I'm using likes to just change audio settings every now and again. Here, you guys can even watch what I'm doing. We'll just go back in and reset up the audio setting. And it just changes them for absolutely no reason because it feels like it. So I'll jump out of here and I'll fix it up and I'll start it again and then I'll start the audio again. I do apologize. So I have to actually turn the screen off. So this will stay on YouTube. Hi, YouTube, if you're watching all this bullshit. But if you pick up on the audio podcast, I actually edit all the stuff out when we get this little error that comes up. Because I'm good like that. Share screen, entire screen, share audio, go there, hit share. Now you have to confirm with me very, very quickly if this is being played.
Louisa, what are your thoughts on this? If you rewind, I don't know, 20 years ago.
Just confirm for me, lovely people, that you've heard that, and I'll go back. Dun, 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 dun. I stopped that, so you shouldn't have heard all of that, but I stopped it. So it just confirms that you've heard that little bit of audio I played. And then I'll go back and push play again. And then we'll keep going because we're good that way. Yes, yep. Okay, hey, let's do this again, Fano. Here we go.
On many issues is not the solution. And in my opinion, in some cases, it might make the situation worse. It's a bit like when they call to adapt to climate change, when the answer is to both adapt and reduce. They say there's only one answer and we're going to go that path. I don't think that their approach is going to be good, that their approach that we know of so far, for kids who have learning disabilities or difficulties, like me, who's dyslexic, kids who are vulnerable, kids from a household that aren't stable. The things kids really need to be better learners are smaller classrooms, full of tummies, homes that are financially secure, and more money into teaching would probably help a lot as well. I don't hear any of that ever from National.
Louisa, what are your thoughts on this? If you rewind, I don't know, 20 years ago, are we worse than we were back then? I mean, are kids these days worse at those basics, your English, your maths, your science?
Well, I think, unfortunately, there's far too many stats that point towards a downwards trajectory in our academic skills. So I think we have to say we are, but I'm just so unconvinced that that means the curriculum needs to be overhauled. I think it means we need to empower teachers and give them what they need. You can have the best curriculum in the world, but if you don't have frontline teachers doing what they do best and kids that are able and ready and willing to learn, it's not going to matter. So, I mean, I'll have a look tomorrow at what National has to say, but I'm not interested in some new working group to redefine our curriculum. I'm far more interested in policy that lifts the admin burden on schools and teachers, that funds schools based on what, kids actually need in their school, and also provides all of those bolt-on services. Just to give you one example from a bolt-on service point of view, my teenage goddaughters have had the number of their buses going from their suburb to their local school halved this year. It means every day there are kids at Selwyn College or kids not at Selwyn College because there wasn't space on the bus to get there. I'm far more interested in how we get our kids to school and, as Pat says, have full tummies and be able to learn, then have a new working group on what the curriculum should be next year.
Pat, do you think it has become a political football, education? I mean, today they've called it, what this whole overhaul is called teaching the basics brilliantly, is what National is calling it. But when you look at national standards and then, there's been lots of different examples right across the different political stripes that have come in. Do we need to stop tinkering with education? Our politicians need to stop tinkering with it.
I think when you see teachers and what they're getting paid and, the reason that teachers teach, if you speak to most teachers, they'll say it's because of the kids. So I would always defer on some levels to asking the teachers, is this going to work? Is this going to be helpful to you? Is this not? So is it a political football or not? Yes. For both sides, probably yes. The answer is going to be working with groups like the PPTA, with the experts who in a classroom full of 6-year-olds is the teacher of that 6-year-old as to what they need to do a better job to provide a better outcome for those kids.
Let's take a quick break.
So there you go. Hopefully you got all that, and I apologize about the balls up with the audio. I shouldn't have said that, because in the audio podcast you won't have known there was a balls up. So the point being that I think I was trying to make in there very clearly with National, and the reason this is a headline now, and this is a vote grabbing situation for National, is they don't. It's like I said, just to expand on something I said in that conversation, when it comes to climate change, what they've said is we need to adapt, right? And that's it. Whereas that's not the answer. Adaptation is not the answer. There's a combination of adaptation and reduction needs to happen. Because adapting, if that's their only focus, that's all you're hearing National say at the moment is adapt, adapt, adapt. That means screw trying to reduce. We'll just have to put up with it. We'll just adapt. We're Holland. We're just going to build higher dikes to stop the water coming in. That's it. That's all. We're not going to try and stop the water. We're just going to build higher dikes, nothing else. So that's all they're doing. And in this, they're saying there's problems with our results. Here is the result. Here is the answer. Now, I don't think anyone's going to argue that some improvements in schools, even the principals, would be good. But the thing is not to come in and go, this is the answer. This is it. And if you don't fit into our square, like I didn't, although I was lucky that I was, and respectfully, not sounding arrogant, but I was smart enough to kind of be able to skate through. Even though if I had have known of my dyslexia much earlier, I probably would have been a different student. But I was sort of not. I didn't cause a problem because I was smart enough to get through. But other kids who had learning difficulties, then if they can't fit that, for want of a better word, national standard in year one, then they fail. Now, if you look at many of the most creative people in the world, people who have engineered, made, invented stuff, many of them were quote unquote failures at school. A better schooling system would provide for those academic kids that really want to nut down on, they need to know Pythagoras theory because they're moving into being engineers, or we need to provide that for them. But for the other ones that don't, we also need to provide something for them. National is offering, well, we don't know 100% yet, but they're intimating at what they're going to offer is a solution for academic kids, right? And that's all that matters. And that is horse shit, right? That is schooling of the 1950s. And it's not the way to go. No one's going to probably say that there can't be improvements, but basically saying the improvements are we're going to rewrite everything and take it back to the 1950s is not the solution. But what it is a headline. What it is a pithy slogan. What it is getting all those right wingers, this woke education system teaching gender, teaching trans issues. It'll get votes from them because it'll be, yep, that's what we want. When I was a kid and got strapped, I got strapped at school as well. Anyway, so that's the point from that. Let's move on. There's still tons and tons of messages coming in. Again, yes, outs. Bloody Windows, says someone. Yep, I agree. Yep. Comments. Right, let's have a look at the story that came out mid-afternoon today around Posie Parker. I can never remember that name. Posie Parker? Posie Parker? That sounds a bit better. Posie Parker has gotten admittance to New Zealand. She's coming. Immigration New Zealand announced today that it had finished reviewing Parker's case, and it found there was, quote, that there was no reason to believe that she is or is likely to be a threat or risk to the public order or public interest. It comes after New Zealand said on Monday it would consider her entry after a demonstration involving Parker in Melbourne over the weekend was attended by neo-Nazis. Again, we talked about this today. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play for you the news story from tonight for us to have a look about, and then I'm going to play you the clip from Today FM, because we actually get into a bit of a debate there. Because one of the things that I'm really quite shocked about is the National Party cozying up to this case. Now, some people are going to say they're not defending Parker, they're defending free speech. Horse shit. Don't buy it. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. They are actively, in my opinion, it is my honest held belief, as they say in litigious world, that they are actively speaking positive voices towards Parker Posie and towards her cause, purely looking for votes. That's my belief. Because this, I'm starting to talk about what I talked about on Today FM, but let me be clear. This has fucking nothing to do with free speech. This has, I'll say it again, nothing to do with free speech. This does not inhibit Posie Parker's free speech one iota, whether she's here or not. No one is stopping her speaking. No one is taking her words down off the internet. She has a far bigger audience online than she'll ever have at rallies in New Zealand. This is not a free speech issue. This is a New Zealand borders issue, right? That's what this comes down to. So, and I do talk about this in the thing. I don't believe it's got anything. People say we can't impinge on her free speech. It's got nothing to do with her free speech. Her free speech is always available to her. You don't have a right to make that speech wherever you want to, right? What you're saying is, I have the right to speak in this location. That's not free speech. I have the right to speak. Sure. I have the right to speak in the middle of someone else's wedding. Well, no, not necessarily. You can hold your protest elsewhere. I have the right to speak in Government House. No, you don't. Well, that's inhibiting my free speech. No, it's not. This is not a free speech issue, right? This is a New Zealand borders issue. And this is, as the story said, the question around, is she, that she is or likely to be a threat or risk to the public order or public interest. Now, is her event going to be a risk to the public order of New Zealand? Immigration New Zealand says, nah, I question that. I question that seriously. Let's have a look at the story, and I'll watch the chat this time to make sure our audio is working properly. Here we go.
Almost like being a turf.
This self-identified turf, aka a radical transphobe, is coming to Aotearoa.
No woman has a penis.
Posie Parker has been granted entry.
No man has a vagina.
The Immigration Department has gone through all public information about Posie Parker, real name Kelly Keane, like her Melbourne rally, which masked neo-Nazis supported. And a woman storming the stage who was pulled off in a stranglehold. Parker's issued direct threats to the Prime Minister.
I'll tell you what, Chris.
Using a hand signal linked to white supremacists, which we've chosen to blur.
Revoke my visa at your peril.
But Immigration New Zealand concluded there is no reason to believe that she is or likely to be a threat or risk.
This is our turf, and we will not accept any turfs on it.
Trans rights activist Chanel Lell says they're genuinely fearful and is planning a counter-protest.
This is the first time I feel afraid for my safety going to a protest.
News Hub's been told the chair of Labour's Rainbow Caucus will attend the counter-protest, and there are discussions underway.
So here's a point, National, you bullshit artists. If you're really saying, oh, I find what she's saying abhorrent, how many of you are going to be at the counter-protest? We talked about this last night. We talked about Chris Hipkins turning up to the counter-protest. We find out today that there are politicians who are going to the counter-protest. If National are not trying to score points with us and get votes with us, how many of them are going to be at the fucking counter-protest? I suspect zero. In other words, they're not going to protest her. They're not protesting what she's saying. I suspect there'll be Green MPs and Labour MPs and other at the counter-protest. We're being told there's going to be. How many from National? Betcha the answer is zero.
About who else from the government will also turn out to support the rainbow community. In a statement, the Immigration Minister Michael Wood said this was a decision for officials, but he said he condemned her worldviews, calling them incorrect, vile and inflammatory. Saying, quote, I find many of her views repugnant and am concerned by the way in which she courts some of the most vile people and groups around, including white supremacists.
We must remember that this isn't someone who accidentally had Nazis showing up at a rally.
That her views are abhorrent.
And Posie Parker's path to get here now unblocked. Amelia Wade, News Hub.
Go back and stop and talk out loud. Now I'm talking out loud. Yeah. And look, for you guys who were watching last night, we had a bit of a conversation around, if no one turned up to counter protest, there'd be no oxygen and it wouldn't get any coverage. Yeah, the last 24 hours and listening to some of the comments that you guys are saying and talking to some people who are involved with some of the protests as well. I am firmly in the camp now of, I don't wish there was one in Dunedin. I don't want to be more of these, but I almost wish there was, because I would certainly be along there as well. And you people are very much on par with that. Here we go. We'll start from here. Free speech does not include a right to a platform or the rights for others to listen. That's exactly it. Stopping her coming into the country would not be a freedom of speech issue. It's horseshit. And it's some certain sectors trying to sell it as that. It's not. Gareth says she was fuming in Hobart after being drowned out, made her irate. And Planet Walk says, hopefully we make her regret coming. Yes. Now I'm back to Gareth's comment. I saw someone talking about taking brass instruments along. You know, I used to know some of the guys at the Salvation Army in Wellington quite well. You know, if the church ever wants to support the rainbow community, those dudes and dudettes at the Salvation Army, they play a mean trumpet or two. Get yourself down to the counter protest and absolutely light that bitch up. I mean, honestly, I'm on board. Last night, I know if you watched last night, it might have seemed like I was a bit like, oh, how's this? What's the best for this? What's the best outcome? I'm like, you absolutely light it up and just noise and noise and noise and noise and noise and noise and everything. Just more and more and more and more and more noise. I'm completely on board. And if I came across last night as sort of being a bit double-minded, it wasn't. I was genuinely trying to think what was the best. And in the last 24 hours, I'm just like, yep. 1,000 trumpets, please. Maybe 999 trumpets and a tuba, because then they can play that boom, 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 boom as she walks off the stage, because that's always funny. So we talked about this today on Today FM as well, and I wanted to share this with you because we kind of get into it a little bit of toing and froing it here. Have a listen.
Can't intervene either. It doesn't reach the threshold. And I kind of agree with that decision, to be honest, because we are a liberal democracy. We have got lots of different ideas, and some of them we don't agree with. Some of them we vehemently disagree with. But it still people should still be allowed to have free speech. That's essentially what I believe. What do you think, Louisa? Do you think she should be allowed in the country?
Well, firstly, I think I just need to say, yuck. I don't agree with her at all. And I think I've read a bit about people positioning her views as being a bit cuckoo or fringe, but they're really dangerous, and the rise of anti-trans rhetoric incites hate. But I do agree with you. Unfortunately, I don't think I can just demand free speech for the people I agree with. And I also think if we shut her out, I wonder whether we'd actually be giving her a higher platform and a bigger voice, and potentially galvanising the people in Aotearoa who share her views. I've seen some great stuff on Twitter around, people with brass instruments should be down at Albert Park on Saturday to drown her out. And I think that's really our option. Is free speech means those that disagree with her can get out and be sharing their views.
Pat, what are your thoughts on this?
Dude, this is a big subject. I mean, I don't think it's a free speech conversation. No one is inhibiting her speech from not coming to New Zealand. She's got a far bigger audience online than she ever had at a rally in New Zealand. So I think that's a nonsense conversation to say it's inhibiting.
I have to tell you, I have to pinch myself when I'm on the radio, because I want to go, she's got a fucking way bigger platform online, and I'm not allowed to use those words on the wireless.
Of the free speech. I mean, she's called for armed men to enter bathrooms. She said that trans men should be sterilised. In my opinion, her rhetoric has reached the level of incitement. But I want to ask Immigration New Zealand one question, because what they've said is that this doesn't reach a, quote, risk to public order. We all saw the Melbourne protest. If her activities don't reach the level of, quote, risk to public order, then what the hell does?
I mean, that's actually a very good question, right? And maybe that doesn't reach the threshold with neo-Nazis marching down the street, doing the Nazi salute and saying "Sig Heil." Maybe that doesn't reach the threshold of a threat to public safety, because that's what it suggests, right, Louisa?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that Immigration New Zealand had enough pressure on them that they were looking for ways to go, can she be here or can she not? But they were pretty clear that the law does not give them the ability to prevent her from travelling to New Zealand. And so maybe we need to relook it, and I know it's one of the things that's been shelved is around our hate speech. But I also think what I think is most important is she is here, and so I actually do think people need to be having conversations in their everyday life, but actually also on Saturday morning about being absolutely opposed to this kind of vile view, because I think there's probably far more people in New Zealand who share views with her than we would like to admit.
Yeah, and that's the scary thing, right? That's the scary thing is that there are people are like that, but do we need to convince them otherwise and be like, actually punching down isn't cool? Or is big protests like what might happen on Saturday against her, is that actually publicising her platform, Pat?
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. And we had this conversation on Big Hero News last night, and we just pondered the question, like, if no one turned up, no one counter-protest turned up, I wonder how much exposure it would get. But I want to ask one other question as well. The so-called gender-critical community, her peers, many of them are running from her. Many of them are running from her views. So people with some of the same views to her are distancing themselves from her because of her views and how she's being supported. So I also wanted to know, what the hell is the National Party doing, getting in lockstep behind her, when many of the people espousing the same views as her are distancing themselves because of her extremism? It's a very strange scenario.
I don't know if they're getting behind her. I don't want to defend the National Party because that's not my role. But they're not getting behind her. They just say that she should be allowed in the country because it's free speech, even if what she's saying is abhorrent. I mean, there's lots of people within New Zealand who say abhorrent stuff, or even more abhorrent stuff, or people who come in from overseas who say stuff as well, right?
I don't know. I just think that they're coming out with one voice, and I do wonder if you're talking before about, like politically advantages around schooling. Is it a political football? My gut tells me, and my feeling is, the National Party at the moment are looking at the voting base. They're looking at the polls. It's very obvious that Luxon is not resonating in the polls at the moment. 5 polls in a row that he's dropped and that Labor's gone up, and they're looking to perhaps pull in some of those further fringe voters that maybe are being attracted to ACT or some of those minor parties at the moment on the further right. And I think it's probably more likely that than actually they are wanting to support her and her free speech.
Yeah, I mean, if that's true, if they're using this as a way to, hey, let's get some voters here, that's pretty appalling. Having people punching down to a vulnerable group of society, that's pretty appalling politics. And they'd probably disagree with that, but who knows what's going on in the background. Let's move on to...
That's it. Let's not move on. Let me just also say a couple of things. Lloyd has done a piece today where he said he's going to the counter protest on Saturday morning in Auckland. So when he pushed back a bit there, it was from a journalistic point of view, not an opinion point of view. So he's going to be at the counter protest on Saturday morning.
The KKK staged a rally in Columbia, South Carolina.
The other thing is
a guy named Matt Buck.
Let me just say this really quickly. Lloyd repeated something that I said. And he said maybe it hasn't reached the level of a threat to public safety. So when Lloyd said to me, when I talked about if this is not the level, what is, he said a threat to public safety. That's not what Immigration New Zealand has said. What Immigration New Zealand has said is she's not a threat or risk to public order. So they consider one of the reasons they haven't turned her away is that she's not a threat to public order. That's not public safety. Now, unless there's a different legal term that I can be educated on, public order is like, is there going to be a massive clash? Is there going to be fights in the streets? Is there going to be violence? That's a threat to public order. So my point was, if this, from looking at what happened in Hobart and Melbourne, is not a threat to public order, then what the fuck is? Because that whole thing just seemed like a threat to public order, all of those things. So I wanted to make clear, because Lloyd repeated, he probably misheard or whatever, that's fine, that I was saying that it hasn't reached the level of a threat to public safety. That's not what I said, and that's not what the judgment says. It says a threat to public order, a threat or risk to the public order. I suspect, if you look at those protests, most people will agree there is a threat or a risk that this weekend there will be a threat to public order. So therefore, my question is, if that's not going to be enough to turn her away, then what would be in the future? The tuba comment that I just made before, I found the clip while it was playing. This is the tuba comment. This is the guy with the tuba here following a bunch of neo-Nazis.
Isn't
that brilliant? That is utterly brilliant. Tuba players of Wellington and Auckland, please get out. Please get out and do that. Please get out and do that. Yeah, so that's happening. And as I said, you know, I'm when I say I'm on board, I'm not pontificating, going, yes, I give it my blessing now. I'm saying through the thought process of the day, when I stop and I put my what's the best outcome hat on, it seems to me that the best outcome is 10 times the counter protester numbers there, every single one of them with some kind of brass instrument and earplugs. You can all you counter protesters, because I'm not going to be there, I'm 1,500 k's away. All you counter protesters have loud instruments and earplugs or earmuffs. And I'm looking forward to seeing the news on those couple of nights. In fact, if it's live streamed, I might even go live while that's on, just to see what's going on. Hey team, we're coming towards the end of the show. I did actually want to share one other story with you. I haven't advertised, I'm going to share it with you, but it's kind of exciting. You know that me and Chewy often talk about the desire to have kind of EVs. Actually, before we do that, it's just I should go to these. I apologize. People have been commenting with that. When people use the martyr analogy, it reminds me of Stephen Molyneux and Lauren Southern were banned from events, starved them of a platform, and their impact will shrink. Yes, I agree with that. And people were noticing me talking about on the show last night. Actually, when that segment starts, he introduces me as Pat Britton and Dunedin broadcaster of Big Hairy News, and then he always laughs. And also, I agree with Carl. They would absolutely love it if she was banned. Yeah, that's true as well. I mean, we said this last night. If she did get banned and wasn't able to come over, she'd be able to play the victim card, and she'd be able to say, "Yeah, look, see, they just don't want my truth. They can't be real. They can't be real." All right, let us have a look at this story. Completely changing tack and changing direction now, because this was an exclusive to News Hub, which means some of you may not have seen it. But actually, in the world of EVs, if you're in the world of EVs, or like me and Chew, you want to be in the world of EVs, it's kind of exciting news. I want to play this for you because it's pretty cool, actually.
News Hub can reveal the government's planning to supercharge our under-resourced electric vehicle charging network by building charge hubs similar to petrol service stations along our state highway network.
Yes.
It's all part of a goal to have 30% of our transport fleet electrified by 2030. They want to build 25 to 34 new hubs, meaning there would be a hub every 150 kilometres along our state highways.
You get that? Every 150 Ks, there'd be a petrol station sized supercharging station. So like I live in Dunedin, you may not have knew that. And I think Christchurch is about 350 Ks. So there's going to be Dunedin, one in the middle, Christchurch, give or take. Queenstown's about 250 Ks. There's going to be Dunedin, one in the middle, Queenstown. So I've been looking at EVs, not that I'm in any position to buy one right now. And I've been going, well, you know, where I live, you really kind of need something that can do 400 or 500 Ks. You just do, because if you're going to Invercargill, if you're going to, because we don't have the infrastructure, this would give the infrastructure to make you start to look at cheaper EVs that can do maybe 300 Ks, because you'd have a supercharger in between those distances for 20 to 30 minutes. It would be able to get you there beautifully. So I'm very excited by this announcement.
And rural New Zealand, they haven't forgotten you. They want a charger in every small town that has a population of more than 2,000 people. Political editor Jenna Lynch has this exclusive story.
Exclusive!
Brandy's had his EV a while now, but recently he's been running out of places to charge.
Back in the days when I had this car, what 2-3 years ago, it was all empty. You know, nowadays, you know, you have like 4 cars queuing.
Too many cars, not enough chargers, and if you're off on a long distance roadie, that's a big problem.
It is quite limited at the moment, so you have to plan ahead.
The Transport Minister knows it.
That range anxiety issue. Am I going to be able to get to where I need to and have somewhere where I can charge without getting caught out?
So this is what the government's got planned, a service centre built specifically for electric vehicles. This is Europe's largest one. Our Transport Minister quite likes the look of it. He wants mega hubs like this with multiple chargers that can fill you up in 15 to 45 minutes every 150 to 200 Ks. The government has no idea how much it'll cost, but the industry says it won't come cheap.
Mega charging hubs are required
They are a big cost, 10 million plus.
Investors like Jolt are ready to go. They just need the government green light.
EV infrastructure in New Zealand has been a challenge to date. The transition to EV is one of the highest adopting rates in the world. Now we have to look at infrastructure.
On top of mega hubs, the government also wants chargers in every small town and one public charger for every 20 to 40 EVs in urban areas. And it's considering compulsory EV chargers in every single new build.
It is something that's become a requirement in a number of overseas jurisdictions.
All that could put a massive strain on the electricity grid.
We also need to make sure that we have things like smart charging technology that enable us, when you go home and you plug your car in at home, to make sure that we spread the load and that we don't overload the network.
All necessary because the government has set a target of 30% of cars being electric by 2030.
At the moment, it's just over 1% of the fleet that's electric. It's a long way to go, but we are making good progress.
The minister hoping his supercharged EV charger scheme is the road to cleaner cars.
Jenna joins us now. Jenna, one of the reasons we've had a high uptake of EVs is...
There you go. That's pretty much the story. Jenna Lynch then talks about, originally it was supposed to be a sum zero total, is that how you say it? So in other words, the cars like the ute tax, the cars that were being charged more, we're going to offset the cars that were getting rebates. But apparently the rebates are well outpacing the people who are paying more. So there's going to be some changes coming, and the suggestions being made that if you buy like a Suzuki Swift, like a low energy car, low fuel energy car, you can get a small rebate. They'll probably drop off the scheme at some stage. Oh, look at this. We've got a friend joining us, people. Oh my goodness. You've just missed the story about the new EV systems, bro, being set up, but I'll just let me finish my last sentence and then we can tell them why you're here. I haven't teased you were coming on, but nobody knows yet. Chewy's pregnant. Is that I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, they'll probably drop off the EV buyback scheme, not buyback scheme, the refund scheme, to offset some of the massive uptake of EV vehicles at the moment. Hey, Chewy.
How you doing, bud?
I can't hear you. Your microphone's echoing in the background.
Hello. How about we do that?
That's better. Hey, man. How are you?
Good.
We've
Charged home.
Okay. Yep. You go. You just tell us. You're welcome to the show.
I had an interaction, didn't I?
First of all, though, Emma's got something to say to you. What about this? See what Emma's got to say?
Oh, come on. Come on, Emma.
Right. Let me go to my Twitter feed. You'll come on board to talk about this. So I cut a clip today. Of course, I cut a clip up today. I do that often about the story we talked about, Posie Parker last night. Where is the line between hate speech and free speech? What does it mean to incite? What should the counter protesters do? Tag Chewy. I actually tagged because that just pops up, so I was in there as well. And Chewy jumped in there because, is that the one? Where are all the comments? Why can't we see comments?
Oh, has she deleted all of them, maybe? I'm just having a weird look. Oh, no, I've got it.
Can you see them on your side? I can't see them on my side. Says there's only one comment there.
I've got it. I'll pop it up. This is so smooth, I tell you what.
Yeah, man. This is well planned. You go for it. You take control. I'll sit back and scratch my backside. Why can I only... I don't know. Or maybe it's because it's in the medias and replies.
There we go.
Replies. So, bigger screen. So I put up the comment and Chewy jumped in there. Let me scroll in a bit. What do you do? Control scroll in to see bigger screen. Chewy jumped in there. Tell us what you said, Chewy, and tell us who you had interactions with.
So we had a comment here from Craig Livingston Doyle, which is a very double-barreled name. He sounds like a villain from a Sherlock Holmes book. I don't know who she is, so we'll check out BHN tonight and see if you have any relevant hate speech clips. If it's concerns about children getting transgender surgery very young, honestly, I don't know. Then I'm more than sympathetic. ATM TBF. Look forward to it. And apart from my horrible typo here, I jump in and go, children don't get surgery. They can be prescribed puberty blockers, which are reversible. and there's a years-long process to go through before surgery is an option. So that's that scaremongering put to bed. And then we get dollar store Marilyn Monroe come in here and say, not reversible, which is not true.
So for people who are listening, because we have a massive audio podcast that goes alongside this, who got in my Twitter feed today as the dollar store Marilyn Monroe? Who is that person?
Well, Kelly J. Keane, also known as the Posie Parker, which must cause the actress Parker Posey endless trouble. So yeah, she's the one that we were hoping was going to get bounced from the border and has been allowed in today. So there are massive counter protests going ahead in Auckland and Wellington over the weekend. Saturday if you're in Auckland, Sunday if you're in Wellington. But yes, that's the quality of debate there. Not reversible. No facts. Nothing to back up what she said, and blatantly untrue.
Do you want to read your last two comments as well? Because I noticed you followed up with a couple of things. People might want to hear what you had to say.
Yeah. So yes, reversible, because they are. The trans people are on hormones and blockers for the rest of their life, so it's obviously reversible. And I said, you know what isn't reversible? Kids killing themselves because vipers like you stir up so much hate. I would ask you to take a step back and get some empathy, but it's clear from the path that you're walking and the company that you keep that you're past that. It's not about women's rights because you're happy to chat with domestic abusers and Nazis who want women to be nothing more than domestic servants and breeding vessels. And it's not about protecting kids because you're happy to go and make their world even more hostile. Go home.
There you go. And that's probably a good time to wrap up the show. I've got my 16-year-old texting me because she's stuck in her room with COVID, needing to get out to use the bathroom. So we'll have to leave it there. But before we do you want to, we've talked about this obviously tonight. Do you want to offer in 60 seconds maybe what your thoughts are on the Wicked Witch of the West turning up to spew her venom?
Yeah, look, if you're lucky enough to be in Auckland or Wellington, definitely go along. I think what they did in Hobart seems to be the best way forward. Just drown them out. Drown her out with as much positivity and love for the trans community that have to weather the storm. Because I can tell from their reactions of the few that I follow on Twitter that this stuff is hitting them pretty hard. They are exhausted with putting up with this bullshit. So I'm sure they'll be very appreciative for as many people that come out in their support with trumpets and Bluetooth speakers and vuvuzelas and drums and whatever you've got.
And most importantly, we've already shown this once tonight, Chewy, but with tubers.
Oh, I love
I was just saying, Chewy, I used to know quite a few of the Salvation Army guys in Wellington. I have friends down there who came out, who were a band who came out of there. They're all very good on the trumpet. So I'm challenging the church world to come up and put your arms metaphorically around the LGBT community and bring your trumpets with you.
It's Cuba Duper weekend in Wellington,
right?
Which has a lot of street performers with instruments. I'm sure they're going to try and shake off their hangovers for that Sunday morning counter rally and really let them have it.
Yeah. All right. Hey, lovely to see you for a sec. I know that me and Chewy talked this afternoon about him popping in and giving us the rundown of his Twitter interactions today, but I didn't tease it, Chewy, because you were off partying tonight. Have a good night at the Fringe.
Oh, excellent. I went to see a follow-on show from what I saw last night, which is called Presentation is Everything. And they did a lineup show with local and national level comedians doing their acts with PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And one of our local comedians, he got up, basically he's on a lineup with a whole lot of international and national tier comedians. He's a new comedian here in the local scene. He basically walked in off the street from his own show, got up on stage and absolutely killed it. I laughed so hard. I'm so proud of the wee boy.
Nice. Excellent. All right. And speaking of those comedians, I've got Donna Brookbanks coming into my studio on Friday afternoon to do a podcast for Let's Talk Funny. And I've got David Corrias coming into the studio on Saturday morning to do a podcast for Let's Talk Funny.
Oh, fantastic. I'm seeing both of those guys over the next couple of days as well.
Yep. So anyway, that's us for tonight, guys. I do have to fly because I've got to go look after my COVID-riddled child and trying to keep it away from the rest of the family. Thank you for being with us tonight. Chewy, thanks for jumping in for a few minutes. Enjoyed your, your little added bit at the end. Remember, if you want to be a part of us, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And although we did already put it up, big thanks to Kim for the super chat. So apparently you are Kim's bitch now because Kim paid for your late fee. So you owe Kim, I don't know, a lap dance, a pole dance, something.
I'll just give you your money back, Kim. It's okay.
All right, team. Thanks for coming on board tonight. Good to be with you, and I'll see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition